Everyone, and welcome to Mod 19.4 to 19.5. We're going to talk about group influence and our individual power. Here are your learning objectives, and here's your vocab. Pause where you need. So first, let's talk about positive influence on our social behavior. So if we are completing an easy task, or it is easy to us because we have trained for it, then we can experience something called social facilitation. So this is when we actually perform better in front of people than we would if no one was there. So if you can think of a task, for example, if you are someone who runs track, you might run faster if you have other people to compete against, or if you have a crowd to watch you. You know your family or your friends are watching, you're going to run faster. And research has shown this to be true time and time again. You are faster in front of people than just racing the clock. Now, again, this is true when it's an easy task. You need that increased level of arousal or alertness. Like, oh my gosh, everyone's here to watch me. It's a big game. And so that kind of increases your arousal level and it pushes you to play harder, to run faster. We can also experience something called social interference, where if we are really trying to do something that's very difficult, that almost feels impossible to us, and we have this huge crowd, or we just have a group of people staring down at what we're doing, then it can actually reduce our ability to do it. So it can make it harder to do. This is called social interference. And then right here is just showing you that this home field advantage is a factor for sports. So being able to play in front of a supportive, cheering crowd really does have benefits to the home team. All right, so now let's talk about like group projects. You know, group projects are not something that you're just going to experience in school. Group projects are something that you really experience in life, right? In business, in all sorts of careers, you're going to have to work together with other people. And when you are assigned something to do together, you might experience, or you might see someone experiencing social loafing. This is when the person in the group feels like, oh, I don't really have to do that much. I'm in a group project. Like, you know, I'll just do my part and I'll be done. Even if you're like, oh no, I make sure I do my part, you might not put in the full amount of effort or the same effort as you would if you were working on the project completely by yourself. So this doesn't always happen in every group project, and not everyone experiences it. But because you're kind of less accountable, it's not just you that the project is relying on, you experience a lack of effort. So now let's move on to bigger crowds and higher emotions. So think like after championship games, which there's lots of research to back up that de-individuation, which is the loss of self-awareness and self-restraint, occurs after a championship game, or any place where there's high intensity of emotions mixed with a large number of people. So for example, after intense games, we've seen people flip over cars, light cars on fire, loot stores, damage property, yell all sorts of things that they might not normally yell or do in front of, national television. In the white supremacist march at the University of Virginia, they were, storming around with torches and yelling blood and soil. In the Black Lives Matter movement, there were all sorts of people looting stores, right? And you will experience those, and even though that's not necessarily like, oh, well, we're protesting this, right? In that huge, massive group, you feel like, well, I'm not doing, you don't consciously think this, but there's a feeling of lack of responsibility because I am just part of a mob, right? So it's not on me. De-individuation. Another example of this is like Halloween, where everyone's wearing masks. So when people are wearing masks and they're harder to identify, there's a sense of I can kind of do whatever and it's not me. So it's a lack of self-restraint, and you kind of feel like you're one with the group, but it can become bad. You also saw this obviously in the insurrection at Congress in January 2021, where people were storming into Congress. Now, those people, some of them were taking selfies, so that kind of shows you the degree to which you can feel de-individuation. Like, they're doing these things and they're like, I'm just part of a mob. I mean, they're not consciously saying that, but they're just part of this big group of people coming through Congress. And so they did, some horrifying things like, smearing feces all over places or destroying rooms and offices and things in Congress, So that lack of self-restraint and the lack of feeling of like, I am responsible for my actions can cause people to do these things. And then later, the police find them and identify them if they've committed a crime, ideally. They find them. So another thing we can experience is group polarization. So this is also fascinating and so relevant to our time right now, especially with politics, but with any topic. It is people getting together who are already like-minded and talking about their beliefs, whether it's climate change or abortion or immigration, right? These are just like hot button issues. And they kind of share those beliefs. And then when they discuss them with the other group, instead of actually finding a middle ground, they actually become more polarized. So if, for example, they did a study where low prejudice groups discussed racial issues, and at the end of those discussions, they found they were even less prejudiced, right? So sometimes this can work out in a positive way, but also you can have these groups that might be like hate groups, and they can eventually get to the point where they are thinking or possibly planning to act in ways that are terrorist acts. So fanatics grow more fanatical, and that can be scary. This is an example right here where when you have a group who is just constantly talking about something like the Holocaust not being real, the more they talk about it and think about it and show whatever point of evidence they think they have to that, it increases their belief and they become stronger in that belief. And just needs to go, I'm sure you've thought of this, but the internet is a huge part of this, because the internet is a place for like-minded people to get together and talk about how right they are in whatever way they're thinking. All right, so a self-fulfilling prophecy, this is pretty straightforward. So if you believe something to be true, you tend to act in that way, and then it increases the belief. So for example, in a research study, they told men that certain women were either attracted to them or not attracted to them. If they were told the woman was attracted to them, they actually acted in a more charming way, in a more charismatic way. And so, in fact, the woman did find that man more attractive. So, because they believed that they were found attractive, they acted that way. So, the believing actually made them more attractive. So another example is just our partner. This is another study. Our partner viewing us as smart or thoughtful. And the more we hear this and the more it's pointed out to us, the more we internalize and believe and act in this way. So just thinking about that too, it makes me think that, the more you can tell yourself positive things about yourself and kind of act that way, like, I am a beautiful person, I am a kind person, I am a thoughtful person, I am a smart person. The more you can think in those ways, and the more you'll act in those ways, and it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I am a smart, hardworking student. I'm going to watch. So you watch the videos, right? Because you have that belief. Then you watch the videos and you take good notes, and then you do well on quizzes and tests. So you're fulfilling that belief about you as a student or your intelligence or whatever. All right, so groupthink is a little bit different than conformity. So this is when people are conforming for the purpose of keeping harmony in a group. So they know they're not insecure about their answer like they might be in conformity. They know that they truly believe they're right, or they truly have this opinion, but they don't want to share it with the group for the reason of keeping harmony. So there are plenty of historical fiascos that are examples of this. Two of them are the Bay of Pigs, when Kennedy was explaining the situation with Castro, and no one spoke up, even though some of them believed that this was a bad idea, the invasion. No one spoke up against the plan because they felt most people wanted this. This was the right thing to do. Castro was a bad man, so this is the right thing to do. So no one spoke up, and it was a fiasco. The Challenger explosion, the same thing. The engineers found many problems with the seals. They thought they wouldn't hold in the temperatures, and they basically didn't share this belief, and ultimately it exploded and 7 people died as a result. Those are just two. There are so many examples of groupthink. So our takeaways. Remember, we tend to do better on easier tasks if we have spectators with facilitation. If it's a hard task, it's interference. It hurts our performance. A group slacker is called a social loafer. De-individuation is that feeling that we can do anything when we're in that huge mass of people and we can't get in trouble. Think about a huge mass of people leaving Melia, and people might be kind of more destructive as they leave if they're rushing out with a big group, especially if it's dark, right? So the more you can kind of take away personalization, the more damaging it could be. When like-minded people talk to each other, they become more polarized and believe more strongly in whatever belief they held. If you think you can't do something, you can't do it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So tell yourself positive things about yourself and act in those ways. Groupthink is when we go along to keep harmony in the group, to please the group, but this can come at a great cost, as history has shown us. So this wraps up 19.4 and 19.5, and I will see you in class. Thanks.